Subscribe to Storylab. Now, let's begin this one. Brendan Castro ran his thumb along the jagged scar above his left knee, a nervous habit from his 17 years as a Navy SEAL. His daughter, Emma, sat across from him at the kitchen table, tongue peeking out as she concentrated on her math homework. The afternoon sun painted gold across her dark curls, the same shade as her mother's had been before the cancer took her 3 years ago. Dad, is 13 times 17 the same as 17 times 13? Emma asked without looking up. What do you think? Brendan knew better than to just give her the answer. At 8 years old, she was already sharper than most adults he'd worked with. Emma's face scrunched in thought. Yeah, because multiplication doesn't care about order. It's like, if you have 13 boxes with 17 cookies each, or 17 boxes with 13 cookies, you still get the same number of cookies. That's my girl. Brendan's chest swelled with pride. Emma had his analytical mind, but her mother's kindness. She was the reason he'd taken a training position at Dam Neck instead of deploying again. After losing Rachel, he couldn't risk making Emma an orphan. The front door opened without a knock. Brendan's hand instinctively moved toward his hip. Old habits, before he recognized his brother Adrian's voice calling out. Anyone home? In the kitchen, Brendan called back, watching Emma's face light up. She adored her uncle. Adrian appeared in the doorway, but something was off. Brendan had spent enough time reading people in hostile territory to notice the tightness around his brother's eyes, the way he couldn't quite meet Brendan's gaze. Behind him came his wife Sylvia, her designer purse clutched tight against her ribs. Uncle Adrian. Emma started to jump up, but Brendan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Finish your homework first, sweetheart. Sylvia's lips pressed into a thin line. She'd never approved of Brendan's parenting style. Too military, she'd said once. Too rigid. The irony was that Emma thrived on structure, on knowing the rules and expectations. She was happier than most kids her age, adjusted better than anyone had a right to expect after losing her mother. We need to talk, Adrian said, his voice strained. About Emma. Brendan felt his spine straighten. Emma's right here. Whatever you need to say. Actually, Sylvia cut in, it might be better if we spoke privately. Her eyes flicked to Emma with something Brendan couldn't quite identify. Distaste? Calculation? I don't think so. Brendan's voice went flat, the tone that had made insurgents rethink their life choices. Emma, why don't you go work on your homework in your room for a bit? I'll check on you in 10 minutes. Emma gathered her books, shooting worried glances at the adults. She'd inherited her mother's emotional intelligence along with everything else. As she left, she touched Brendan's arm, a small gesture of solidarity that made his throat tight. Once her door clicked shut upstairs, Adrian finally spoke. Look, man, I know this is going to sound crazy, but Sylvia and I have been talking. About custody. The room went very still. Brendan could hear his own heartbeat, steady despite the spike of adrenaline. Custody. You're gone all the time with training ops, Sylvia said quickly. Emma needs a mother figure. A stable home environment. We have the space, the resources. I'm gone 40 hours a week. I have a standard work schedule now. Emma is thriving. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. Brendan, you have to admit, raising a kid alone when you're in your line of work, it's not ideal. My line of work? Brendan leaned back in his chair, forcing himself to appear relaxed. Inside, every instinct was screaming danger. I train SEALs now. I work 9 to 5. I'm home every night for dinner. You're still military, Sylvia pressed. What if you get deployed? What if something happens to you? Emma would be orphaned, traumatized all over again, which is why she's in my will. You two are her legal guardians if anything happens to me. Brendan watched Sylvia's face carefully. But I'm not going anywhere. And this conversation is over. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Brendan's expression stopped him. They'd grown up together, and Adrian knew when his older brother was done talking. After they left, Sylvia practically vibrating with frustration, Brendan sat alone in the kitchen, trying to make sense of the encounter. They'd never shown interest in Emma before. At family gatherings, Sylvia barely acknowledged her niece. And now, suddenly they wanted custody? His phone buzzed. A text from his buddy Raymond Parks, One of the team's 6 operators he's still trained with. Check your secure email. Something weird. Brendan's blood went cold. Raymond never contacted him about work issues through personal channels. He pulled out his laptop and logged into his encrypted military account. One new message from Raymond. Saw this on a dark web monitoring sweep. Thought you should know. The attachment loaded slowly. When it finally appeared, Brendan's vision tunneled. It was Emma's school photo from this year, the one where she was missing her front tooth and grinning despite her self-consciousness about it. The same photo that hung on his refrigerator. The same photo Sylvia had asked to take a copy of last month. For a scrapbook, she'd said. Above the photo, bold text, military brat for sale. Trained by Navy SEAL father. Resilient, intelligent, prime acquisition. Below it, an auction timer counting down, 5 hours, 43 minutes. Current bid, $2.4 million. Brendan's hands didn't shake as he screenshotted every detail of the auction page. Years of training had taught him to compartmentalize, to function even when his world was ending. But inside, a cold rage was building that he'd only felt a handful of times, usually right before he pulled the trigger. He called Raymond. Where did you find this? Anonymous tip came through our monitoring network. Someone wanted us to see it. Raymond's voice was tight. Brendan, the metadata on that photo, it was uploaded 4 hours ago from a residential IP address in Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach, where Adrian and Sylvia lived. Can you trace the server hosting the auction? Brendan was already moving, pulling out the tactical gear he kept locked in his safe. Emma was still upstairs, safe, but that auction had his address listed as her location. They had 6 hours before someone might show up to collect their purchase. Already on it. Listen, man, I looped in the CEO. He wants to talk to you. Brendan switched to his secure line. Commander Sharon Holt answered on the first ring. Castro, I saw the auction listing. I've got FBI cybercrimes looking at it now. With respect, ma'am, FBI cyber takes days to move. That auction closes in under 6 hours, which is why I'm authorizing a direct action. Sharon's voice softened slightly. Brendan, I've got kids too. We're going to find these people. But I need you to stand down until we have a team assembled. Ma'am, that's an order, Senior Chief. Don't make me confine you to base. Brendan forced his voice steady. Understood, Commander. He hung up and immediately started packing. Orders were orders, but Emma was his daughter. If Sharon thought he was going to sit on his hands while predators circled his child, she didn't know him as well as she thought. His phone rang again. Adrian. Brendan. Sylvia wanted me to call. She's sorry about earlier. She was out of line with the custody thing. We'd love to have Emma over this weekend. Make it up to her. No. The word came out flat and final. Come on, man. Don't let adult disagreements affect Emma. She loves spending time with us. Brendan thought about the IP address, about Sylvia's sudden interest in custody, about that photo she'd taken. Adrian, I need you to be straight with me. Does Sylvia have financial problems I don't know about? The pause was too long. What? No, why would you? Because $2.4 million is a lot of money. Enough to pay off a gambling debt, or a blackmail demand, or whatever hole she's dug herself into. Brendan, what are you talking about? But Adrian's voice had gone hollow. He knew, maybe not the details, but he knew Sylvia had done something. Check your wife's computer, her phone, her bank accounts. And when you find what I'm talking about, you have 2 choices. You turn her in yourself, or I will. But either way, she's never seeing Emma again. He disconnected and blocked the number. Then he texted Raymond, I need everything you can pull on Sylvia Castro. Bank records, online activity, associates, everything. Emma appeared in the doorway. Her math book clutched her chest. Dad, what's happening? Brendan crouched down to her level. This was the hard part. Emma was smart enough to sense danger, but young enough to be terrified by it. He had to find a balance. Remember how I taught you about stranger danger? And how he practiced what to do if someone ever tried to take you? Her eyes went wide. Is someone trying to take me? I'm not going to let that happen. But we're going to go stay somewhere safe for a few days while I take care of some work stuff. Okay? I need you to pack a bag. Clothes for 3 days, your tablet, your favorite books. Can you do that? Emma nodded, her face serious. Are we in danger because of your SEAL stuff? I'm going to keep you safe. That's a promise. He pulled her into a hug, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. I need you to be brave, Em. Can you do that for me? I'm always brave, she said, with her mother's fierce confidence. Mom said Castros don't quit. That's right. We don't. While Emma packed, Brendan made 2 calls. The first was to Maureen Dunn, a social worker he'd worked with after Rachel died. She'd helped Emma process her grief, and she owed Brendan a favor after he'd helped her son get clean and into the Navy. Within 20 minutes, she'd agreed to take Emma to a safe house, a women's shelter she ran that had military-grade security. The second call was harder. Command is going to have my ass, Raymond said when Brendan explained his plan. But I'm in. Tom and Saul, too. We've been sitting behind desks too long anyway. This isn't official. If it goes sideways, then it goes sideways. Someone put your kid up for sale, Brendan. That's a line you don't cross. By the time Maureen arrived to pick up Emma, Brendan had traced the auction server to a hosting service in Romania. The service was known for turning a blind eye to illegal content for a price. But there was a vulnerability in their security that Brendan knew how to exploit. Years of cyber warfare training weren't just for show. I'll call you every night before bed, Brendan told Emma as she climbed into Maureen's car. And this will all be over soon. Will you catch the bad guys? Emma asked. Yes. Good. Because they're really bad if they're messing with you. Brendan watched the car disappear down the street, then returned to his computer. The auction page was still active, the timer ticking down. 5 hours, 11 minutes now. The bid had jumped to $2.7 million. He pulled up the source code and started digging. By midnight, Brendan had assembled a picture that made his blood run cold. The auction site wasn't just selling Emma. He'd found 17 other listings in the archived sections, all children of military personnel, some as young as 5. The oldest had been 14. All of them showed as successfully delivered. The technical architecture was sophisticated. Multiple proxy servers, cryptocurrency payments, dead drops for information exchange. Whoever was running this had resources and expertise. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd used the same base code template for all 17 auctions. And that code had a signature. Brendan recognized it. 3 years ago, he'd been part of a joint task force that had taken down a weapons trafficking network. The same coding patterns had appeared in their communication systems. They'd arrested most of the network, but the technical specialist had slipped away. A man named Clifton McMillan who'd been a civilian contractor for the Department of Defense before selling his skills to the highest bidder. His phone rang. Raymond, got your intel on Sylvia Castro. You're going to want to sit down for this. Brendan put him on speaker while continuing to type. Give it to me. She's in deep gambling debts to a loan shark named Kurt Stanton, ex-military, dishonorably discharged for black market arms dealing. She owes him $400,000. But here's the interesting part. Stanton has connections to a trafficking network that was never fully dismantled. The same one you worked against 3 years ago. The pieces clicked into place. Sylvia had needed money desperately. Somehow, she made contact with Stanton. And Stanton, who knew about military families through his old contacts, had shown her a way to pay off her debt, and then some, by providing access to a high-value target. A Navy SEAL's daughter who'd been trained to be resilient, intelligent, adaptable. Exactly the kind of child that would command a premium price in the darkest markets. There's more, Raymond continued. We pulled Stanton's known associates. Clifton McMillan is listed. They've been working together for the past 18 months, using the same auction format to move kids. The buyers are all vetted, wealthy criminals, corrupt politicians, people who want children they can control and mold. They specifically target military kids because they're trained to be disciplined and obedient. Brendan's jaw clenched so hard he heard his teeth grind. Where's Stanton based? That's the problem. He moves constantly, but we think his main operation is somewhere in the Norfolk area. He's at a warehouse registered under a shell company, supposedly importing medical equipment. The FBI's been watching it, but they haven't been able to get enough for a warrant. They won't need one. Brendan, I'm not asking permission, Ray. I'm doing this with or without support. A long pause. Then, command knows. Sharon called an emergency meeting. She's authorizing a DevGru operation. Tom, Saul, and I are wheels up in 2 hours. Officially, this is a training exercise in cooperation with FBI cybercrimes. Unofficially, we're bringing your girl home safe and putting these bastards in the ground. I'm coming. I know. Sharon said to tell you that if you go rogue, she'll have you court-martialed. But if you happen to show up at the staging area as a civilian consultant with unique knowledge of the target, well, that's different. Brendan felt something loosen in his chest. He wasn't alone in this. Staging area? The old aircraft hangar at Dam Neck. 2 hours. And Brendan, bring your gear. The nasty stuff. After hanging up, Brendan opened his weapons safe. He'd accumulated quite a collection over 17 years, some of it standard issue, some of it acquired through less official channels. Tonight, he selected carefully. A suppressed 416 Hong Kong dollars rifle. His Glock 19 with custom sights. A K-bar knife that had seen action in 3 countries. And because he anticipated close-quarters combat, a Benelli M4 shotgun. He was loading magazines when his computer chimed. The auction page had updated. The bid was now at $3.1 million. And there was a new message from the seller, from Sylvia. Seller note. Buyer should know target is currently secured off-site due to father's heightened awareness. Delivery will be completed as scheduled. Father is SEAL trained, but currently unaware of full scope. Payment secures guarantee of delivery within 24 hours of auction close. So Sylvia thought Emma was still at the house. She didn't know about Maureen, which meant when someone came to collect Emma, they'd find an empty house and a very, very angry father waiting. Brendan smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. He had work to do. The staging area was alive with controlled chaos when Brendan arrived. Raymond, Tom Norman, and Saul O'Donnell were checking gear alongside 4 other operators Brendan recognized from various deployments. Sharon Holt stood at a makeshift command station, coordinating with what looked like FBI cyber specialists. Castro. Sharon's voice was crisp, professional. You're here as a civilian consultant, which means you follow orders. Clear. Crystal, ma'am. Good, because we've got movement. She gestured to a monitor showing surveillance footage. 20 minutes ago, 2 vehicles approached your house. 4 men total. They attempted entry through the back door. When they found the house empty, they left. But here's what's interesting. We tracked them to this location. The screen shifted to an aerial view of a warehouse complex near the Norfolk port. Kurt Stannon owns this through a shell company. We've been monitoring it for 3 months, but couldn't establish probable cause. However, 30 minutes ago, our thermal imaging picked up significant activity. At least 12 people inside, possibly more in the sublevel. Sublevel. Brendan leaned closer. The building has an underground section that doesn't appear on the original blueprints. We think that's where they're holding the children. Brendan's hands curled into fists. How many kids? Unknown. But based on the previous auctions, possibly all 17. They may be using this as a collection point before transport. Tom stepped up beside Brendan. He was built like a tank, with a scar running down his jaw from a knife fight in Yemen. We're going in hard and fast. 3-vehicle approach, full tactical gear. FBI has authorized deadly force against anyone who resists. What about my sister-in-law? Brendan asked, his voice cold. Sharon met his eyes. Sylvia Castro is currently at her residence. FBI agents are moving to arrest her now for conspiracy to commit human trafficking. Your brother is cooperating, apparently. He found evidence on her computer and turned it over voluntarily. At least Adrian had made the right choice in the end. It didn't excuse his earlier blindness, but it was something. Gear up, Saul said, tossing Brendan a tactical vest. We move in 30 minutes. As Brendan checked his weapons one final time, Raymond pulled him aside. Listen, man, I know what you're feeling, but we need you focused. This isn't about revenge. It's about getting those kids out safe. I know. Do you? Because the look in your eyes right now, I've seen it before. Right before you did that thing in Fallujah that we're not supposed to talk about. Brendan met his friend's eyes. Those kids have been in there for days. Weeks. Some of them for months. They're terrified. Traumatized. And the men who did this to them are still breathing. That's not right, Ray. That's not justice. So we arrest them. We put them through the system. The system that let Clifton McMillan walk 3 years ago. The system that's been watching this warehouse for 3 months while children suffered inside. Brendan shook his head. No, tonight, we end this. Permanently. Raymond was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, but we do it smart. We get the kids out first. Then we handle the rest. The vehicles rolled out at 0200 hours. 3 unmarked vans, each carrying 4 operators and enough firepower to level a small building. Brendan rode with Raymond and Tom, mentally reviewing the warehouse layout. The thermal imaging had shown most of the targets on the main floor, with 2 heat signatures in the sublevel that weren't moving, likely guards watching the children. Remember, Sharon's voice crackled over the comms, we need at least one of them alive for intelligence. Stanton and McMillan are priority captures. Copy that, Raymond responded, but he exchanged a glance with Brendan that said they both knew how unlikely that was. They parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot, using the shadows of shipping containers for cover. The warehouse looked abandoned from the outside, rusted siding, broken windows, no visible security. But Brendan spotted the cameras hidden in the eaves, the reinforced door frame, the way the broken windows were actually one-way glass. 6 cameras, he whispered into his mic, standard commercial security system. Ray, can you kill it? On it. Raymond pulled out a small device, a signal jammer that would disrupt the wireless cameras without triggering alarms. Within seconds, the feeds would show a loop of empty hallways instead of 8 heavily armed operators approaching. They stacked up at the door. Tom had the breaching charge ready. Saul and 2 other operators, Marcus Webb and Luis Torres, covered their flanks. The remaining team would enter through the roof access once the initial breach was complete. On my mark, Raymond said quietly. 3, 2, 1, execute. The door exploded inward. Flashbangs followed, filling the space with light and sound. Brendan was through the door before the echo faded, his rifle tracking for targets. The first 2 men died before they understood what was happening. They'd been sitting at a table playing cards, weapons within reach, but not ready. Brendan's suppressed rifle coughed twice, and they slumped over. Moving, he called, advancing toward the stairs that led to the sublevel. Behind him, he heard the controlled chaos of his team clearing the main floor. Shouts, more suppressed gunfire, someone screaming about federal agents. Brendan didn't care about any of that. His focus was singular. Get to those children. The sublevel door was reinforced steel with an electronic lock. Brendan placed a small shaped charge at the hinges and stepped back. The explosion was contained, precise. The door fell inward with a satisfying crash. 2 guards rushed toward the sound, automatic weapons raised. Brendan dropped them both with headshots, already moving past their falling bodies. The corridor beyond was lit with harsh fluorescent lights. He could hear, crying now, children's voices, terrified and pleading. The next door was unlocked. When Brendan kicked it open, the smell hit him first. Fear, sweat, and something worse. The room was divided into cages, literal cages, like something from a nightmare. And inside them were 17 children, ranging from maybe 5 years old to early teens. They stared at him with hollow eyes, too traumatized to even cry out. Federal agents, Brendan said, forcing his voice gentle despite the rage burning through him. You're safe now. We're here to take you home. A girl in the nearest cage, maybe 12 years old, with the bearing of someone who'd grown up around military discipline, spoke up. Are you really military? Navy SEAL. My name is Brendan. We're getting you out of here. They said no one would come. They said our parents didn't want us anymore. Brendan felt something crack inside his chest. That's a lie. Your parents have been looking for you. They never stopped. He started opening cages, using bolt cutters from his pack. The children emerged slowly, clinging to each other. Some could barely walk. One boy, maybe 7, had bruises around his wrist from restraints. Ray, Brendan called over comms. I've got 17 kids, sublevel. We need medical and transport now. Copy. Main floor is secure. We got 4 suspects in custody. Stanton wasn't here, but McMillan is. Raymond's voice cut off with the sound of gunfire. Contact. East side. Brendan turned to the oldest girl. What's your name? Jessica. Jessica, I need you to be strong. Take these kids up those stairs. Turn left, go straight ahead. My team will protect you. Can you do that? She nodded, her jaw set. Military kid through and through. Brendan waited until they were moving, then keyed his mic. Kids are coming up. Someone get them to the vans. Where's that contact? Stanton just showed up with reinforcements. Tom's voice was strained. For more vehicles, at least a dozen shooters. They're trying to lock the place down. Of course they were. Stanton had realized his operation was compromised and had come to destroy the evidence, including anyone inside who could testify against him. Brendan made his way back up to the main level. Through the broken door, he could see the chaos. His team had taken cover behind shipping crates and support pillars. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness as Stanton's men fired from behind vehicles outside. We need to break this stalemate, Sharon's voice came through comms. FBI tactical is 10 minutes out, but these kids need immediate medical attention. Brendan assessed the situation. Stanton's people had superior numbers and had them pinned down, but they were also positioned in a kill zone, the open area between the vehicles and the warehouse door. All they needed was someone to get behind them. I'm going around, Brendan said, already moving toward the back of the warehouse. Negative, Castro, Sharon snapped. That's a direct order. I'm a civilian consultant, remember? I don't take orders. He switched channels to reach only his team. Ray, Tom, Saul, give me 2 minutes, then light them up. I'm going to flank. He didn't wait for a response. There was a loading door on the south side of the warehouse, obscured by stacked pallets. Brendan slipped through and into the night. The sound of gunfire was constant now, punctuated by shouts and the sound of vehicles maneuvering. Brendan moved through the shadows like he'd been trained, silent, purposeful, deadly. He circled wide, using shipping containers and abandoned equipment for cover. Within 90 seconds, he was behind Stanton's position. There, Kurt Stanton himself, barking orders into a radio. He was older than his file photo suggested, with gray at his temples and scars on his hands from his military days. Next to him, Clifton McMillan hunched behind a laptop, frantically typing, probably trying to wipe servers remotely. 8 other shooters were spread out in a loose perimeter. They were focused on the warehouse, confident no one could get behind them. Arrogant. Fatal. Brendan waited for his moment. Then Raymond, Tom, and Saul opened up with everything they had, forcing Stanton's men to duck and focus forward. Brendan opened fire. The first 3 went down before anyone realized there was a threat from behind. The 4th turned, bringing his rifle around, but Brendan was already on him, knife out, blade finding the gap in the man's vest. The 5th and 6th died in quick succession, tactical shots that ended them before they could shout warnings. Stanton realized what was happening too late. He spun, bringing up a pistol, but Brendan kicked it from his hand and drove him to the ground. McMillan tried to run. Tom emerged from the warehouse and clotheslined him, sending him sprawling. Within 30 seconds, it was over. The last 2 shooters threw down their weapons and raised their hands. Brendan pressed his knee into Stanton's back, zip-tying his wrists with brutal efficiency. You made a mistake, he said quietly. You put children up for sale. One of them was mine. Stanton tried to twist around, his eyes going wide as he recognized Brendan's face. Castro. Shit. Listen, man, I didn't know. That she was mine? Or that I would find out. Brendan leaned close. Doesn't matter. You're done. FBI tactical rolled up minutes later, taking custody of the suspects. EMTs rushed in to treat the children. Brendan watched as they were loaded into ambulances, each one getting immediate care. Some were physically injured. All of them were psychologically damaged in ways that would take years to heal. We've got a problem, Raymond said, approaching Brendan as the chaos settled into organized activity. Sylvia Castro. The FBI team went to arrest her, but she's gone. Her house is empty. Looks like she ran right after the attempt on Emma failed. Brendan had expected this. Sylvia was smart enough to know that once her buyers didn't get their merchandise, her life was over. She'd have a go bag, emergency funds, probably a fake passport. But she'd made one critical error. She'd underestimated how far Brendan would go to find her. The arrest of Kurt Stanton and Clifton McMillan made national news within hours. The FBI held a press conference, carefully avoiding any mention of DevGru's involvement. The official story was that a joint FBI Naval Criminal Investigative Service operation had taken down a trafficking ring targeting military families. 17 children recovered, multiple suspects in custody, servers seized containing evidence of a network spanning 3 countries. What the news didn't report was that during transport, Stanton and McMillan had both attempted to assault federal officers. The attempts had been unsuccessful. Both men were now in the ICU with injuries that suggested they'd fallen down several flights of stairs. The fact that they'd been in a single-story building at the time was conveniently omitted from the official reports. Brendan didn't care about the politics. He sat in a debriefing room at Dam Neck, watching through one-way glass as FBI agents questioned one of the buyers who'd been stupid enough to show up to collect a purchase and walked into a sting operation instead. The man was singing like a bird, providing names and payment records and locations of other operations. "You did good work," Sharon said, entering the room with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Brendan. "Those kids are alive because of you. They're traumatized because I didn't figure it out sooner. You couldn't have known." Sylvia was careful. She covered her tracks. Not careful enough. Brendan sipped the coffee, barely tasting it. "What about Emma's case? Can we track where the auction buyers were?" FBI Cyber has that information. Several were arrested in coordinated raids this morning. But the money trail leads to offshore accounts. It'll take months to unravel fully. "I'm not interested in the money. I'm interested in Sylvia." Sharon was quiet for a moment. "Officially, there's a warrant out for her arrest. Interpol has been notified. Every airport, train station, and border crossing has her photo. She won't get far. But unofficially, she had a 12-hour head start before we got organized. Someone with resources and planning could disappear in that time." Brendan set down his coffee. "I'm taking leave." "Brendan, 2 weeks. Personal time. I've got the days saved up." Sharon studied him carefully. "You know that if you do something off the books, I can't protect you. Not even from this. I understand. And you know that revenge won't fix what she did. Won't undo the trauma. It's not about revenge," Brendan said quietly. "It's about accountability. Sylvia thought she could sell my daughter and walk away. She needs to understand that actions have consequences. Just be careful. For Emma's sake. She needs her father. That's exactly why I'm doing this." Raymond was waiting for Brendan outside the building. "I talked to Adrian. He's a mess. Keeps saying he should have seen it coming. He should have. Cut him some slack, man. He genuinely didn't know. Sylvia kept him in the dark about everything. The gambling, the debts, all of it. He found her laptop hidden in the garage. That's what made him turn over the evidence." Brendan felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but it was buried under too much anger. Adrian made his choices. He picked Sylvia, defended her, tried to convince me to give her custody of Emma. He doesn't get absolution just because he finally opened his eyes. Fair enough. Raymond pulled out a tablet. "I did some digging, called in some favors with folks who owe me. Sylvia emptied her bank accounts, about $80,000 total, the same day as the auction. She used 3 credit cards to buy plane tickets under her real name, probably as decoys. But I found something interesting. She owns a cabin in West Virginia, inherited from her parents. Deed is in her maiden name, Hines. The property is remote, off-grid. Perfect place to hide while planning your next move." Brendan took the tablet, studying the satellite photos of a small structure deep in the Monongahela National Forest. "You sure?" I pulled her cell phone records from before she ditched the phone. She made 3 calls to a number registered to a prepaid phone activated 2 weeks ago. That phone last pinged off a tower 15 miles from this cabin. Who was she calling? No idea. But whoever it is, they're helping her disappear. Raymond met Brendan's eyes. "What are you going to do? What needs to be done?" "Want company." Brendan considered it. Having backup was always smart. But this was personal in a way that went beyond tactics and strategy. This was about a line that had been crossed, a violation so profound that the rules no longer applied. "No, this one's mine." At least take this. Raymond handed over a small device. GPS tracker. Keep it on you. If you're not back in 3 days, I'm coming in. 3 days is plenty. The cabin was exactly as remote as the satellite photos had suggested. Brendan approached on foot, having parked his truck 5 miles away and hiked in through dense forest. It was early morning, the kind of gray pre-dawn light that made everything look washed out and unreal. Smoke rose from the cabin's chimney. Someone was home. Brendan circled the structure, looking for security measures. There was a camera hidden in a tree, cheap, wireless, the kind you could buy at any electronics store. He disabled it with a well-placed stone. No alarm sounded. The cabin had 2 windows and 1 door. Through the dirty glass, he could see Sylvia sitting at a small table, laptop open in front of her. She looked haggard, her hair unwashed, dark circles under her eyes. She wore the same clothes from the family photo on Adrian's Facebook, designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, now rumpled and stained. She wasn't alone. A man sat across from her, his back to the window. Brendan couldn't see his face, but the body language was familiar. Someone military-trained or former law enforcement. The way he held himself, the alertness even in rest. Brendan settled into a crouch behind a fallen log and waited. Patience was something SEALs learned early. Sometimes the best action was no action, not until the moment was perfect. 20 minutes later, the man stood and stretched. Brendan finally got a look at his face and felt a jolt of recognition. Daryl Hansen, another dishonorably discharged soldier who'd worked with Stanton's trafficking network. The intel had listed him as potentially involved, but unconfirmed. Now Brendan had confirmation. Hansen grabbed a coat and headed for the door. "I'm going to check the perimeter," he called back to Sylvia. "Keep that laptop closed. If they're tracking your online activity." I know, Sylvia snapped. "Just hurry up. I want to get moving by tonight." The door closed behind Hansen. Brendan watched him walk a predictable patrol route. North side, west side, checking the trees and sight lines. Amateur hour. Hansen was worried about distant threats, not someone who'd already infiltrated his perimeter. When Hansen's back was turned, Brendan moved. He crossed the clearing in absolute silence, coming up behind the man with the practiced ease of countless similar operations. The chokehold was textbook, cutting off blood flow to the brain, not air to the lungs. Hansen struggled for maybe 5 seconds before going limp. Brendan zip-tied him and gagged him, then dragged him into the trees. He'd wake up eventually, but by then it would be too late to matter. The cabin door was unlocked. Sylvia was so confident in her isolation, her planning. She never heard Brendan enter. He crossed the space in 3 long strides and had his pistol pressed against the back of her head before she could scream. "Don't move. Don't speak." Sylvia froze, her hands hovering over the laptop keyboard. Brendan could see what she'd been working on: airline reservations, a search for fake passports, encrypted messages to someone about safe houses in South America. "Brendan," she breathed, and there was real fear in her voice now. "Good. She should be afraid. You put my daughter up for sale." "I didn't. It wasn't," Sylvia's voice cracked. "I was desperate. Stanton said he'd kill Adrian if I didn't pay. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice." Brendan pulled out his phone and placed it on the table in front of her, opening a voice recording app. "You're going to tell me everything. Every detail of how this network operates. Every buyer, every facilitator, every safe house. You're going to give me information that will save other children. And then we're going to discuss what happens next. And if I refuse..." Brendan pressed the pistol harder against her skull. "You auctioned an 8-year-old child to predators. You think I'm here to negotiate?" Sylvia started talking. She talked for 2 hours, her voice growing hoarse. She confirmed what Brendan suspected. The network was larger than just Stanton's operation. There were connections to corrupt officials, offshore financial structures, buyers in a dozen countries. She provided names, accounts, meeting locations. Everything. Brendan recorded it all. This information would go to the FBI, to Interpol, to every agency working to dismantle human trafficking networks. The intel alone would save dozens of lives. When she was done, Sylvia slumped in her chair. "Are you going to kill me?" "I should." Brendan holstered his pistol and pulled out a sat phone instead. He called a number he'd memorized years ago, a direct line to FBI Special Agent Sharon Holt. How about Sylvia Castro? West Virginia. Coordinates I'm sending now. She's got evidence that'll take down the rest of the network. You'll want to move fast before her partner wakes up. Sylvia's eyes went wide. You're turning me in? That's it. What did you expect? A bullet. Brendan leaned close. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. You'll be convicted of conspiracy to commit human trafficking, attempted kidnapping, and about a dozen other charges. The other inmates will know what you did. Child traffickers don't last long in general population. Every day you wake up will be a reminder of what you destroyed. Please, Sylvia whispered. Please, I'm sorry. I never meant for Emma to actually. You posted her photo. You described her training. You set the price at $2.4 million and watched the bids climb. You knew exactly what you were doing. Brendan stood. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. He left her there, sobbing at the table. Outside, Hanson was starting to stir. Brendan disabled him again. Another chokehold, precise and efficient, and left him trussed up for the FBI to collect. By the time Brendan reached his truck, he could hear helicopters in the distance. Federal agents would secure the cabin, take Sylvia and Hanson into custody, and collect every piece of evidence. The laptop alone would be worth its weight in gold for investigators. Brendan's phone buzzed. A text from Raymond. Kids are being reunited with families. Emma's asking for you. He started the engine and headed south toward home. The revenge he'd imagined, visceral, violent, final, hadn't materialized. In the end, watching Sylvia face justice was more satisfying than any alternative. She would spend decades in a cage, branded as the worst kind of criminal, forever known as the woman who tried to sell her niece. That was enough. Emma ran into his arms the moment Brendan walked into Maureen's shelter. She clung to him with a ferocity that made his chest tight, her face buried against his shoulder. You came back, she said, her voice muffled. I'll always come back. Brendan held her close, breathing in that strawberry shampoo scent. Always. Did you catch the bad guys? Every single one. Emma pulled back to look at him, her dark eyes serious. Aunt Sylvia, too? Brendan had been dreading this conversation. Emma was smart enough to have figured out some of what happened. She deserved honesty, but how did you tell an 8-year-old that her aunt had tried to sell her? Aunt Sylvia made some very bad choices. She's going to have to face consequences for those choices. She was going to give me to bad people, wasn't she? Emma's voice was small. I heard you and Uncle Adrian arguing. About custody. About me being worth money. Brendan's heart broke. You're not a commodity, Em. You're my daughter. You're priceless. Nothing in this world matters more to me than keeping you safe. I know. Emma hugged him again. That's why I wasn't scared. Because I knew you'd find me. You always find me. They stayed in the shelter for 3 more days while the FBI finished processing evidence and conducting interviews. Brendan spent the time with Emma, answering her questions as honestly as he could, reassuring her that she was safe, that the people who'd tried to hurt her were gone. Adrian visited once. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past week, his eyes red-rimmed and haunted. I'm sorry, he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway while Emma colored at a nearby table. I should have seen what Sylvia was doing. Should have protected Emma instead of defending her. Yeah, you should have. Adrian flinched but nodded. I know I can't make this right, but I want you to know I'm testifying against her. Everything I know, everything I saw. She's going to pay for this. She already is. Brendan glanced at Emma. And you and I? We're done. You're Emma's uncle in DNA only. Don't call, don't visit, don't try to be part of her life. You made your choice when you took Sylvia's side over mine. Brendan, she could have been killed, trafficked, abused, all because your wife was a monster and you were too blind to see it. Brendan's voice was quiet but hard as steel. I don't forgive that. I won't forgive that. Stay away from my daughter. Adrian left without another word. 3 weeks later, Brendan and Emma stood in a courtroom, watching as Sylvia Castro was formally charged with conspiracy to commit human trafficking, attempted kidnapping, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. The latter charge stemming from her connection to the buyers, some of whom had killed previous victims. The evidence was overwhelming. The laptop, the recordings, her own confession. Her lawyer tried to argue duress, claiming Stanton had threatened her. The judge wasn't buying it. Mrs. Castro, Judge Allison Casey said, her voice cold, "You had multiple opportunities to seek help from law enforcement. Instead, you chose to profit from the exploitation of innocent children. This court finds you guilty on all counts. You are hereby sentenced to 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole." Sylvia's legs gave out. Guards had to carry her from the courtroom. Outside, reporters swarmed, but Brendan kept Emma's face hidden. They didn't need to see her, didn't need to know her name. She'd been through enough without becoming a public spectacle. "Is it really over?" Emma asked as they drove home. "Yeah, sweetheart. It's really over." "Good." She was quiet for a moment. "Dad, can we get pizza tonight? The kind with extra cheese?" Brendan felt his throat tighten. Despite everything, the trauma, the fear, the violation, Emma was still just a kid who wanted pizza. She was resilient in a way that amazed him. "We could get anything you want. Then I want pizza, and I want to watch a movie. Something funny. No bad guys." "Deal." 6 months later, the ripple effects of the operation continued. The evidence from Sylvia's laptop and Stanton's C servers led to 43 arrests across 7 countries. The trafficking network that had operated for nearly 3 years was completely dismantled. All 17 children recovered from the warehouse were in therapy and slowly rebuilding their lives with their families. Clifton McMillan died in prison, officially ruled a suicide, though the circumstances suggested otherwise. Inmates didn't take kindly to child traffickers. Kurt Stanton was serving life without parole in a supermax facility. He tried to cut a deal, offering information on his buyers and associates. The prosecution had taken the information and prosecuted him anyway. Daryl Hansen pleaded guilty in exchange for a 20-year sentence. He was currently in protective custody, which said everything about how other inmates viewed his crimes. Brendan had been quietly promoted to Master Chief and given a commendation for his work on the case. He'd also been offered a position with a joint task force focusing on crimes against military families. He'd accepted. Emma was doing better than anyone had a right to expect. She still had nightmares sometimes, still asked questions about what had happened. But she was laughing again, playing with friends again, looking forward to the future instead of being trapped in the past. They sat on the back porch on a warm October evening, watching fireflies dance across the yard. Emma was reading a book, some fantasy novel about dragons and magic, while Brendan cleaned his service pistol, a routine that had become meditative over the years. "Dad," Emma looked up from her book. "Ms. Maureen said I'm brave, but I don't feel brave. I feel like I got lucky that you saved me." Bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you are scared. Brendan set down the gun and pulled Emma close. "You were brave when you helped those other kids escape. You were brave when you trusted me to fix things. And you're brave now. Every day you keep going despite what happened. Like Mom was brave? Exactly like Mom was brave." Emma leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you think the other kids are okay?" "I think they're healing. It takes time. But yeah, I think they'll be okay." "Good." She went back to her book, apparently satisfied with the answer. Brendan watched the fireflies and thought about justice, revenge, and accountability. He'd wanted blood when he'd found that auction. Wanted to paint the walls with Stanton's people to make Sylvia suffer in the most visceral way possible. In the end, the cold machinery of justice had been more satisfying. Watching Sylvia's face as the judge read her sentence. Knowing she would spend decades caged like she tried to cage Emma. That was revenge of a different sort, slower perhaps, but permanent. The world was still full of monsters. There would always be people willing to exploit the vulnerable, to profit from suffering. But for now, this particular network was destroyed. 17 kids were home safe, and Emma was reading a book about dragons while fireflies danced and her father sat nearby, ready to protect her from whatever came next. That was enough. For now, that was more than enough. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.